Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Pepsi Nitro, and we're going to talk about understanding D&D was. All right, does D&D was DMs and players. All right, so I'm fascinated by D&D was and D&D copy dungeon masters and players. Right. So you have people who it is a huge. Actually, it's not huge. It's pretty niche. There is a distinct and severe group of D&D was and D&D copy game masters and players, all right? And on the D&D was side, they are actually dungeon masters. They are running Dungeons and Dragons. So what is D&D was? D&D was is people who refuse to play the current version but are also very passionate about it, about talking about the current version, right? Actually, I don't think I have a ton of beef with D&D was players who play 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E and don't whine about 5E, because I think there's 4 of them in the world, right? Like, people play D&D 1E, 2E, 3E, and 4E, and then they bolt onto that, like with a drill bit. Like, they're whining about D&D 5E and their commentary about how every book that comes out for 5E sucks, right? It's a thing. It is a huge thing. You could spin around on YouTube and throw a foam rock and you will hit some weird grognard playing 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E, and absolutely never shutting up about the latest book that D&D 5E just produced, right? Honestly, if you can even point me to someone who just runs 1E or 2E and does not squawk incessantly about 5E, I would love to see this creature. I would love to be in the presence of this purple unicorn. Please send me their way, right? So you have this situation where you have these people, right? D&D was, and then also D&D copy, right? They're playing copies of Dungeons and Dragons that are literally built to look exactly like older versions of Dungeons and Dragons, with maybe a few elements of 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E, and they want, and so you're getting them there, and they're running these copies of D&D, right? So basically, you have this situation where you look at them and you're like, why are you doing this? Why don't you just get on 5E? The 5E community would be really blessed to have you there, right? It would be really great to get rid of this massive division. It would be just so nice to, like, arrive together, right? Like, why don't you just come do the thing with us, right? Enjoy the full color books, enjoy the well-written books, enjoy the books that have the lessons from every single edition of Dungeons and Dragons, rather than, playing some crusty old game that we don't even get 5 minutes in before I have to explain to somebody why this massive cultural offense has already been put into the game. It's a mess. It is a hot mess, right? So I've been trying to understand, how do we fix this? How do we get there? Well, part of it is just understanding these people, and I think I understand these people better because I drank Pepsi Nitro. All right. So it was Mother's Day, and I needed to get additional material, something I had forgotten to get in my initial go. So I went to get additional stuff for Mother's Day, and I'm there, and there's Pepsi Nitro on the stand. So I buy 2 4-packs of it, right? And they're big, and they're brand new. I don't know what they are. I'm like, this is kind of like I knew that Nitro had been a trend in coffee, and I enjoyed Nitro in coffee. I spent a lot of money on Nitro coffee, right? So I'm like, ooh, I'm really excited to try this, right? So I get this thing. I take one of them out, and it says chill, right? So I put them in the fridge and I chill them. And then the second step, there's like steps to drink this thing. It says pour hard. And I was like, pour hard? What the fuck? What are you talking about? Right? And so I had to look it up, right? And they're like, and pour hard is an alcohol term, right? And by the way, when I Googled Pepsi Nitro to figure out what the heck I was drinking, it was like, is Pepsi Nitro alcohol, right? Like, and it's not, right? But it is absolutely skinned like an alcohol, right? So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So Pepsi Nitro is like, so it says pour hard, and then it's like admire and enjoy. And I'm like, admire, right? Like, I gotta look at this thing? And so I had to take, first of all, I had to go and get a different cup and get a clear glass so I could admire the head. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this Pepsi Nitro is skinned like alcohol. Now, but it's not alcohol. But I'm excited about this, right? Because I don't get to do alcohol. basically it's kind of in my blood. All of my grandparents had problems with alcohol. It's definitely a thing, right? My granddad left my dad when he was 2 weeks old, right? Like, thanks a lot, alcohol, right? It was bad, right? It's not good. So I'm really fascinated by alcohol, but I've never had a drop. I've never drank alcohol. I'm a complete teetotaler. I've never drunk, right? And I can't, because it's like alcohol is literally in my blood. It's like very hereditary, right? So, but I'm really fascinated by alcohol because it's this thing that has these classifications and these categories and all this history, and like I'm into things that have classifications, categories, and history, right? And so I look askance, I look, at the side, look at all these people like, oh, that looks interesting, right? And I realized I had seen a meme earlier with Gandalf, and somebody was drinking Guinness, and like they're like, oh my gosh, this Guinness is bitter and unpleasant, right? And then Gandalf like says, as it should be, with his pipe, right? And I'm like, wait, there are people that like to drink bitter, unpleasant drinks? And then it all snapped into place, right? D&D it sucks compared to D&D 5e. It's absolutely terrible. Like, it has crap black and white art. It's got crusty old grognard, writing in it. It has horrible layout that is not, that doesn't use the current, layout tools, and like it's just junk, right? And the D&D copies are literally crap that's been thrown together by somebody on their weekend. It's not even done by professional companies, right? Maybe Frog God Games is like an exception, and there's exceptions here and there, one or two, but generally D&D copy games are weekend nonsense, right? They're crap. They're just crap, right? So then you're like, wait, why are D&D and D&D copy, why are they playing this nonsense? Why do they insist on playing bad games when there's a good game right in front of them? Now we know. There are literally people who are like, I want to drink this bitter, unpleasant thing because it makes me cool in my eyes and a few other people's eyes. There you go. There are people who are like, I don't want a good tasting drink. I don't want something that's pleasant that I will enjoy. I want my drink to be like me, bitter and unpleasant. And I think that massively explains the vast majority of D&D 1E, 2E, 3E, 4E players who play today and D&D copy. Bitter and unpleasant. And they want their game to be the same as they are. Pepsi Nitro explained D&D and D&D copy DMs and players to me. I think that's the correct way to understand them. What do you think? Is there a better way to understand why on earth people are playing bad games when they can play good games? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.